All right, we've had him on before, several times, I don't know, 4 or 5 times maybe. He has a new book out, There Was Nothing You Could Do. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA and the End of the Heartland. Steven Hyden. Obviously, I mean, everyone knows how much I love Bruce. So I had to have him on. The book is great. I got the book a few months ago he sent to me, and I got another copy, so I've read it twice. Wow. It's fantastic. Fantastic. You did it. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really glad you liked it. I'm glad you read it twice. That's amazing.
Read it twice. Yes. Yeah.
People keep asking me, "Are you going to go on Kirk's show?" Like I've had several people ask me this.
Hey, here you are.
I'm glad we could make it happen because I feel like the people were asking for it, and now we can
inevitable. Yes,
deliver the content to the people.
There you go. My journey. So I'm four. How old are you?
I'm 46.
All right, so I'm 3 years older. I'm 49. I'll be 50 in October. So what happened to me was like around 80, late 82, early 83, I started listening to like American Top 40, and then I'd get my mom would let me get a Billboard magazine, the Osco Drug. And so for me, it would be like, okay, Thriller happens, the Thompson Twins, Footloose, Huey, it just came at like a blizzard. So I didn't know. So when I heard Dancing in the Dark for the first time, I was like, oh, this guy's like, he's like Boy George, or, just another guy who's got like a kind of a really kind of cool pop hit. And my mom's sister's husband, my Uncle Steve, now divorced, but a great guy, was a huge fan. And I remember one day this is like probably in the middle of Born in the USA, the madness. He was like, just so you know, this guy has songs like before Born in the USA. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no, he doesn't. And so I went backwards, and that's where my whole journey began. But I mean, this is the album that, for me, when I hear this, it makes me think of like being young. And it's the Springsteen album that I've like run away from. Like you write about so great. Like, when you're in high school, I kind of ducked my head. And now we've come full circle 40 years later where it's just a great album. I wonder why this album in particular, as opposed to all the other great ones, why was this the album that you wanted to write about? Finally, when you wrote about a book about Springsteen.
Yeah, so, my experience was just like you. I was, a little bit younger, but Born in the USA, Dancing in the Dark, that was my introduction to Bruce Springsteen. I mean, I write at the beginning of the book about finding the tape in my dad's car and hearing it and it having a big impact on me. So I think it starts with that, where this is like one of the albums like I've known the longest in my life. You mentioned Thriller. Mm-hmm. Like if you were young in the early 80s, it's like the government issued you a copy of Thriller. Yeah, Everyone had that record.
Yes.
So that's probably like the first album I was aware of, like as an album, and not just songs you hear on the radio. But Born in the USA, was very soon after that, and certainly like the first like rock record I ever heard. So it had a personal significance to me. It's not my favorite Bruce Springsteen album. I'd probably say Darkness or Born to Run, like one of those two. I feel like a lot of people probably say that.
Yeah.
But it did feel like a record where you could write about the record. I think the story behind it is very interesting. The way it intertwines with Nebraska, obviously, just how productive Bruce was as a songwriter and how many songs just ended up on the cutting room floor that were like brilliant songs and very different songs from what ended up on the record. And then all the stuff around the album, like the cultural stuff, how significant it was, and how I felt like you could write about a lot of other things while writing about this album, like how rock music's changed, how America's changed.
Right.
It's just like a lot of things that are connected to this record. So, I love Darkness probably more, but I don't know if I would have as much to say about Darkness. I don't know if I could write a whole book about it. I mean, I probably could because I love Bruce Springsteen, but I just feel like I had more material maybe for this album.
I get that. I do find it interesting. I remember we were messaging a while ago about the second leg of this current tour, and I was concerned that he was going to kind of do the same static set list he did in the first leg, which has turned out to be totally false, wonderfully.
Right.
But I was like, maybe, because now I don't, at the time the ticket sales were crazy and he just decided to get his publishing. I was like, maybe he's just going to do a 40th anniversary Born in the USA tour. And you said, I don't think he's going to do that because he has a weird relationship with this album, which is true. Like Born to Run, that comes out the 2005. I think he did the 30th anniversary. He came out in 75.
Right.
He did the big documentary, the Tom Zimmy documentary, and all that stuff. Darkness got a weird like 34th anniversary, whatever it was, 2010. But same thing, big package, like big live concerts. Did a great show just with the band. I think it was at the Paramount, which is a great, if people are Bruce fans, it's like one of my favorite things. Born in the USA, by far his biggest album, sold 30 million copies worldwide. Just had his 40th anniversary, as you know. I'm sure the timing's not coincidental for the book. And like he puts out this sort of half-assed album, 40th anniversary thing. Like there's no mention of it. And this is a guy who just sold his publishing to a company. Like I would think Born in the USA would mean something to them. He has an odd relationship. He doesn't play. I think Born in the USA, the song I'm sure we'll talk about, is one of his 4 or 5 best songs. Essentially never plays it in the United States. Has a very strange, I wonder if this album had sold 800,000 copies, if he might have a different relationship. I'm sure the answer is yes.
Yeah, you didn't even mention the River. I mean, there's a River.
The whole tour. Yeah,
where he plays the album in its entirety.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
It's funny. I was on the None But the Brave podcast, and I don't know if that will have gone up before or after this goes up, but we were complaining for a long time that there wasn't a Nebraska Born in the USA box set.
Of course,
because that just seems like that would be the greatest Bruce box set of all time. Like you just trace the development of that. You start like in late 1981, early 82, writing all those songs.
Out in LA,
all the outtakes, all the, him going out to LA in 83, all the songs he recorded there.
Nebraska with the band.
Electric Nebraska. Live tracks from the tour. It could be like a 10-disc, $300 box set, and like freaks like you and me would buy it like in an instant.
In the flash, yeah.
And I don't know. As fans, we like to psychoanalyze Bruce. It's hard to know exactly what the reasoning is, but it's hard not to conclude that like there's some weird feeling, ambivalence about this record. I mean, he's talked about this before. Like he writes about this in his book Songs and in his memoir Born to Run.
Right.
Really having this like mixed feelings about the album. Artistically, he's called it a grab bag.
Yep.
He doesn't feel like it's as consistent as Nebraska. He's also, I think, expressed misgivings about how popular the album was, like as you were saying before.
But to your point in the book, I'm sorry, but your point in the book, you do a good job pointing out some inconsistencies with Bruce, and one of them is like that, like he wanted this success,
right?
Like it's not exactly. Like he made it clear, like I'm making, especially after Nebraska, like I'm making a pop record that's going to be a massive, like he did that.
Yeah, and he wanted to have that kind of impact.
Yeah.
The only, the way we see Taylor Swift now, like the impact she has on culture, that's similar to what Bruce Springsteen had in the mid 80s. And to have that kind of impact, you have to have hits. You have to have a record that sells 30 million copies worldwide. But, there's also the control freak side of Bruce Springsteen, the person who wants control of his art, control of where his career is going. And I think when you're that popular, you lose control of the context that your songs are in. And the title track and the way that's been perceived, that's like the, exhibit A in that,
right.
And just how that's been misinterpreted and misappropriated over the years. And that's, I'm sure, why he doesn't play it in America, in a way, maybe. I mean, it is interesting with Bruce, and I've heard him say this, that he feels like he's bigger in Europe than he is in America now.
I think he's definitely bigger in Europe than in certain parts of America, for sure.
And it is interesting how he's playing these like amazing set lists in Europe. Right. And it does feel like he's catering to what he feels like are his best fans. I don't know. I mean, it feels that way sometimes, like with some of these like deep cuts that he's busting out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think outside the Northeast, I think that's probably true. Like for Bruce at this point, which is weird.
He's still playing arenas It's not like he's,
right.
He's still selling out everywhere.
Oh, sure.
But he does play stadiums, I think, in Europe. I mean, you see these the videos of these shows, and they're just enormous.
He writes. I think you have a chapter called "Bruced Out," right, from the Rolling Stone interview. I remember that reading it as a kid, obviously, and like I think the next album obviously shows that. I think he just got worn out by it. But you're right. You can't overstate. I would say Michael Jackson, Prince, Bruce, and I guess Madonna from that stretch, like 82 to 86, where that was just all me. Born in the USA came out in 84, was the #1 album of the year in 85. I looked up this morning, was 16th in 86 with no singles. Right. That's how crazy Bruce. It was like a 3-year block, and then Live came out after that. So it was just a wild stretch.
Yeah, like a 5 LP live album that,
right,
you know, it is just an enormous seller. You know, I mean, that just speaks to what the appetite was for him and how he could play 4 stadium shows in LA at the end of the Born in the USA tour. I think he played 6 in the Meadowlands like a month earlier. And he could have probably played more in both areas.
Oh, for sure.
He just wanted to keep selling tickets. I'm sure he could have played at least a few more in LA. But, you know, I mean, that's like in the mid 80s. That's like 350,000 tickets that he was able to sell. You know, just a phenomenon.
Where is Bruce today if that happens? If Born USA sells 2 million copies? Like, who is he today? Like, who is his? Maybe he doesn't make ton of love after that. Like, maybe I'm reaching here, but I'm saying whose career is it? Like Mellencamp, or is it probably not? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not like he was obscure.
No, right. No.
As we, you know, he's playing big. I mean, but although I think he was bigger as a live act than he was as a
recording,
you know, selling albums. I mean, he would sell like a couple million, I think, of each record.
Yeah, The River was a good hit. Yeah,
it was a big hit, but he wasn't selling 30 million records.
No.
It wasn't doing Michael Jackson type numbers.
Yeah, 7 top 10.
That's an interesting question because, you know, when I still think that, like, when the average person, if you say Bruce Springsteen, like, they picture the guy with the headband and you know, the sleeveless, you know, denim jacket and all that stuff.
Right.
It's such an iconic image. You know, if you look at Halloween, people who dress like Bruce Springsteen,
a bandana.
It's going to be the Born in the USA Bruce. I mean, I still think he would still be popular. He would still be acclaimed. Yeah, I don't know if he's more of like a Tom Petty, John Mellencamp type figure. I mean, I think he would be more critically acclaimed than those guys.
For sure. Yeah, Mellencamp for sure.
But he wouldn't, I don't think he would quite represent the same thing that he does now, which he does have this status that's beyond just a rock star. People look at him and I think they expect certain things that they don't expect from like a Mick Jagger or Paul McCartney. You know, like we look at those guys and they're like, oh, these are just entertainers.
Yeah.
And they're beloved. But, you know, like with Springsteen, I think people look at him as like, he needs to act a certain way. He needs to represent something important. And that's why he got in trouble for like the ticket controversy.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Because people just felt like Bruce Springsteen shouldn't act like this, you know?
But he also presented that image too. Like he brought that on himself. Like that was, you know, that was always part of his thing. Like it was, the tickets were less and, you know, so I mean that does.
Nobody wins unless everybody wins. Like that whole thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't tell the story of Born in the USA, obviously, without telling the story of Nebraska. I'm curious when like another book comes out before your book that's about Nebraska, does that affect you writing the book at all? Do you not read it? Do you read it? And I'm just, from Warren Zane's book, we had him on as well. Like, I'm curious if that plays any role when you're writing a book.
Yeah, I mean, that came out toward the end of me working on mine, like when I turned in the manuscript. I think that book came out, I'm trying to remember, it was like, I think it was May last year.
Yeah, it's about a year ago. That's right, yeah.
And my book was due in June. So it was toward the end. I'm glad it came out before I was done writing, because I definitely read that book.
Yeah.
And it's a great book, but I wasn't really worried about it because it's a much different book. I mean, it's like an authorized book, essentially.
He talks to
Bruce Springsteen. And obviously, that's a great perspective to have from the man himself. But like, I knew my book was going to be a little bit different, that it was going to be more of like a broad, almost like bird's eye view of the book, the kind of book that you couldn't write if Bruce Springsteen was involved.
Yes.
You know, which is not to say the book is a hatchet job or anything. I mean, I think it's like coming from I love Bruce Springsteen. It's coming from a place of affection, but there is, you know, maybe more criticism of Bruce, his music in the book than there would be maybe in a book that was authorized.
Right.
But I like to think that they complement each other. And I've heard that from people.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Who've read both. There's obviously some crossover, but, yeah, they're very different approaches.
Well, I liked about yours. I liked Warren's book a lot too, but what I liked about your book was I didn't need to hear about the actual physical making of Born in the USA. Like I've been down that road with all these. I've read. Like I know everything. I like a guy about my age perspective on the record. and the time, which was a great part of it. I'll ask you this. So let's say you and I are doing a Born in the USA, just the album itself, draft. Right. You have the first pick, let's just say.
Yeah.
What would your first song be? And by the way, if you're picking last, what would your pick be?
So my first song would be My Hometown.
That'd be yeah, that's obviously the title of the book. Well, I mean, not the title of the book, but from the song, yeah.
It's my favorite song on the record. Yep. I just think musically, lyrically, it's such a beautiful song.
Also the last of the 7 singles.
Right.
Which is his singles collection from that album, even the order of it. Bruce business has always been weird anyway. It's strange, just marketing and I read your thing last week about the album covers. Just everything with Bruce business is always weird. He'll release random. Remember he released that Hungry Heart 95 single from friggin' Berlin with those guys. He'll just throw weird shit in there. But Born in the USA being Dancing in the Dark being the first single is fine. I get it. But then the second single was Cover Me.
Right.
Which to me sort of signified that we're not fucking around here. We're trying to sell records. My Hometown could have easily been the second single or whatever, but or Born in the USA, but he went with Cover Me. My Hometown's a good pick. I would pick Born in the USA first. I get that. What's the worst song on the album?
And I just want to preface this by saying that I love every song on the album. I don't think there's a bad song on the record, but the song I skip the most is Cover Me.
Yeah, that's my brother Ryan's favorite Bruce Springsteen song. To give you an idea of his intellectual depth and curiosity. Yeah, there's Something in the Night does nothing for him, Racing the Street, but Cover Me, he says should have been in whatchamacallit, Roadhouse. He feels like that should have been in the Roadhouse movie, which is both a compliment and a criticism, I think, at the same time.
Right.
I would probably say I'm Going Down, probably.
Exactly. I mean, I love the guitar playing.
Yeah.
Right. That would be my other one. I would say I'm Going Down, and it's funny because they're both singles, and they were both
top 10.
Because I'm Going Down, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't think of that as like a hit. It's not one of the more famous ones.
Well, as you know, if you go to a Bruce show and you're just go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we're going to do a second round pick.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And this might be a reach for some people, but it really is my second favorite song on the record, Bobby Jean.
Yeah, that's a great song.
I love Bobby Jean.
That's a great song. He's playing a little more now too.
Right.
It's funny, 20% of that album are songs written about Steven Van Zandt, who wasn't a part of the band. He's never really acknowledged that, but obviously No Surrender. Again, if I could ever talk to Bruce, if I got an hour with Bruce, I'd have 10 million questions. But I'd be like, why wasn't No Surrender a single? And why was I'm Going Down a single? I don't understand.
Well, he's No Surrender is another one of those songs where I feel like he
plays all the time.
He plays all the time, but in what he's written about it or talked about it, he's kind of slagged that song a little bit. I mean, he's talked about how Steven talked him into putting it on the record. Right. And because the thing he said is that he feels like the lyrics are a little naive or simple-minded about, adulthood and the sacrifices you have to make and all that. But the funny thing about it is that we swore blood brothers against the wind. I'm ready to be young again. I mean, that's not naive for Bruce Springsteen. That's what he did. That's what him and Little Steven did. That's the reality. Yeah. For most people it would be, but for him it's just the reality of it. But there's there's another example, just that one lyric you gave. Blood Brothers is then another song. That's a lyric from another song they recorded at the time that didn't make it. That's a beloved song that wound up showing up later on. The draft of the songs that didn't make the album, and you have a whole chapter dedicated to what your album would be, and it's a damn good one. It's probably better than the final one. But, and I think you say this too, I've done this, we've all done this. Do I want Frankie on there? Do I want This Heartland? Do I want, pick your song, Protection. But ultimately, what he chose is what I want on that album. I wouldn't want it. I don't want Born USA any other way. It's it's just so ingrained in my life. Yeah, and it's funny how cohesive the album is, because a lot of the songs are you think of it as this big statement about America type record, but a lot of songs on that album have nothing to do with that. Right. It's only because you have Born in the USA at the beginning and My Hometown at the end. It makes it feel cohesive because you have those bookend tracks. They're the big kind of statement type songs. Right. And then it's the sound of the band. I think that's the connective thread with those songs. The fact that they banged out those songs so quickly, which is another interesting thing about how that record was made, because you think of it as this big, slick, radio-friendly record, but they were playing live in the studio, not really, having set arrangements. They were just banging it out because they were so like fucking tight.
Right. Yeah, they were
in 1982.
Right. Yeah, they were killing it.
They were just like coming off the River tour. I mean, it was just like the peak of their powers.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the sound of the band, I think, is what really connects those songs.
No question. And I always find too with these things like, so if, My Love Will Not Let You Down wound up on Born in the USA instead of Downbound Train, like I'd be one of these guys who's like, oh, Downbound Train, like I wish it was on Born. Like it's the songs that aren't like, oh, that'd be great, which I love that song. But
that's another like secret, like hit for me. Downbound Train is like way up there for me, even though like the lyrics like aren't great. They're kind of simple a little bit. Like, she said, Joe, I gotta go, that kind of rhyming. Yeah. But the band makes it sound great. Awesome. Like it sounds perfect. It's like perfect, like Heartland rock.
It's
like,
crazy.
I picture Heartland rock in my mind. Right. I picture that song, even though it wasn't a hit. It feels like a hit to me, but it wasn't released as a single.
Well,
you can put every song on that record out as a single, though. I mean, like,
for sure.
There's no like kind of weird song that wouldn't have worked on the radio. I mean, they all would have worked. I think. And by the way, a lot of those songs were just even the Bobby Jean, Downbound Train. They were on the radio anyway at that time. Right. They just put Bruce songs on the radio just because that's what did you learn during this that surprised you? You know a ton about Bruce going into this, but is there anything that you're like, Jesus, I did not know that? Just like stopped you in your tracks. This is gonna sound self-centered, but like I feel like I learned a lot about myself writing this, in just the sense of, I know I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, but like I didn't realize to what degree he's influenced just like how I look at the world.
Yeah.
Like the philosophy in his songs, the way he like thinks about America and how we're supposed to treat one another. I really feel like that planted a seed in my mind when I was a little kid that I didn't really realize until I was writing this book. And like you're kind of thinking about it all the time, and you're like, oh yeah, like how Bruce thinks about this stuff. It's kind of what like I think about this stuff. And you just don't think about that with a rock star. You don't think like, oh, they're affecting my worldview, right. But Bruce is that kind of guy. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but I didn't really realize to the extent that's impacted me. So yeah, that's a fun thing about writing a book, because you're just thinking about the same thing for like over a year. So you can go like pretty deep in your own mind. That's like kind of like the worst thing about it too, maybe, but I don't know. I always like that process.
Is there a rock album that's had not so much the impact, but has been as successful, I guess? Is this a dumb question? Is there by a mainstream rock artist that has nearly had the impact of this record?
Or just recently?
Just at its time, even.
I write about like...
I think you have a bunch of different things. Right, a bunch of different examples.
I write about like Appetite for Destruction as like a comparison record, like how... Because that comes out 3 years later, it's obviously a big hit.
Right.
But like how Axl had... That's
a good one.
Almost like the opposite point of view of Bruce. Like Bruce had this idea of community. We have to build together. We have to, find a way to uplift each other. And then you have Axl singing Welcome to the Jungle. You can have anything you want, but you better not take it from me. Right. That kind of like, yeah, you can do well, but I'm caring about myself.
Right.
And just like what that says about what I think American culture was responding to, like the optimism of Bruce. I don't know if that's something that...
And already by then, Bruce was...
connect to as much.
By then, already in my life, as a Bruce fan, like, friends were making fun of me for liking Bruce Springsteen in like 89 and 90. It became like, I was like, where did you guys go? We listened to this freaking record together in my house. Like, now you're bailing on me. Like, and that was, by the way, at the time where I was starting to really discover 15, 16... Darkness, Nebraska, The River. So I was like, no, guys, hold on, wait, listen, hang in here. This guy is fucking great. But they were like, oh yeah, Born in the U.S.A. And it became Guns N' Roses, who were great. They just weren't my thing. But then Bruce became not cool. And, the double record, that became like, people making fun of me in high school. It was a weird, like 5 or 6 years before it became cool again.
Yeah, I mean, just Bruce, and like he puts out, as you said, like Human Touch and Lucky Town. I think that's like March of 92.
92, yeah.
That's like right when like Nirvana's blowing up.
Right.
And like Human Touch could not be any like any farther away from like Nirvana. You know, it just was a record that I think instantly seemed dated as soon as it came out.
Yes.
I actually think Lucky Town is
a good
really
album.
good record.
It's a really good record. I think there's actually good stuff on Human Touch, but just the production is from a different time. Like the writing is good, but you're right. Like I think the title song is really good, but you're right. But like it came out and people are like, what? This guy's singing like Better Day. Like who is this freaking guy? Like I remember my friends were, like, I remember going
people
to
did not want to hear that.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear from like a 42-year-old,
right.
you know, rock star singing about his kids.
I remember the day it came out. I remember the day it came out. I had a free period in high school, and my buddy Peter French had a car, and I was like, hey, I got to go to Strawberries. I'm getting the tapes today. And he's like, you're still listening to this guy? I was like, fuck yes, I'm still listening to this guy. It was like Scarlet Letter. It was like a thing of shame. But then I don't know. But then he kind of came back, and is it? I don't know when he became. Do you have a moment where it became cool to like Bruce Springsteen again? Is there a moment in history where you can point? I think it was just accepted by so many of these guys too. I think.
I mean, I think it was two things. One was getting back with the E Street Band, and just like how well that tour was received. And then in the mid 2000s, you started having like hip young rock bands talk about Bruce, and it was the opposite of the 90s, like where no one was talking about Bruce. Now you had Arcade Fire and the Killers and the War on Drugs a little bit later, you know, saying we love Bruce, and it just I think helped to make him more acceptable. And then he makes Magic. Which is like a record. It sounds like it's influenced by all these younger bands.
It's true,
but it's the younger bands doing him, but he's doing them, doing him, and I mean, that's a great record. I think
his best this century. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But so often, like Nebraska was the touchstone. So many people thought, but it's interesting. You're right about other guys now are not afraid. Younger guys say actually, Born in the USA is great too. Like that's a great record.
Yeah. For sure. Like Nebraska, I feel like is always the record where if you don't like Bruce Springsteen.
Right.
That's the record to like.
Yeah,
it's
right. Yeah.
Right. There's no saxophone on it. There's no like none of the big kind of R&B like bar band type stuff. And it's a great record. I mean, no question about it. But with Born in the USA, it's interesting because I think that record people in the 90s thought it was dated sounding. I think because of the synthesizers and stuff. Yeah. But then the record in the 2000s, it no longer was considered dated because there were a lot of other bands
doing that,
adopting that instrumentation. So like the record didn't change at all, but the perception of it changed, which is a funny thing with music. I mean, that always is happening. There's always like artists who are cool and then they stop being cool and then they get rediscovered and they're cool again. And I don't know, it's like really hard to predict like how that's going to happen. Like young people like Steely Dan now, like who would have predicted that?
Yeah, it's true.
But, you know, it happens.
Of the, not now, of the 7 singles that were released and finished, that reached top 10, all 7. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Born in the USA, Dancing in the Dark, I'm on Fire, obviously, Glory Days, all had videos. I guess My Hometown had that video as well, right? Like that live one.
Right.
And that's it. Yeah. Cover Me did not, and I'm Going Down did not. Of the videos, what is the best Bruce Springsteen performance in any of the videos? I would vote for, of course, his performance as the mechanic and I'm on Fire with the when he comes out into the car at the beginning. I'm a fan of that. Yeah,
I would agree. Because like in the album cycle, there's the live performance videos, Dancing in the Dark, Born in the USA. I mean, he's not live and Dancing in the Dark, but he's pretending to be live.
Right.
And then there's the videos where Bruce acts.
Yes.
And he's acting in I'm on Fire, and he acts in Glory Days.
Yeah.
By the way, do you feel like people shit on Glory Days? Because I love that song. I feel like people like to make fun of that song. Am I wrong?
I've had a complicated relationship with Glory Days, as many people in this world have. I really loved it when it came out, and I thought it was silly. But I remember seeing him when I saw him last year. That was in the encore, and like I was like, oh, good. You know what? Why am I being such an asshole? Like this is just a good time. Like why am I being such a prick about Glory Days? Just have some fun with it. Like it's not.
The lyrics are great.
Yeah, like, they're good.
They it's again very specific in the way that Bruce lyrics are. You can see him having a beer with that woman from high school, and it's like a nice story. And then it's like a lot of songs on Born in the USA. People think it's just like a happy-go-lucky song about old times, but he's actually talking about how nostalgia is empty. Like nostalgia just It's like the boring stories.
Yes,
that's all you're left with.
Right.
That no one cares about.
And the lone Steven, really basically Stevie's only real contribution. Like, right? Am I wrong in terms of in the video?
No,
in the videos, I mean, I'm sorry. Like he's
in the video.
He's with the band in the video. Yeah. And he plays but he produced the album, right?
Yeah, one of the producers, and like he's most of the songs are like when Van Zandt was still around.
Right. Yeah.
And that Glory Days video is cool too, because that's like you see what the band's going to be in like 20 years, like when it's Steven Van Zandt with Nils Lofgren and Patty and that lineup.
Well, there's not 726 background singers and 8,000. Which
right.
I enjoy the show. I would give anything for Bruce to just go on tour with like 6 of those guys again.
Yeah, like the horn section. I don't know if I
don't love it. I don't need the horns blaring during Adam raised the cane. I'm like this guy's breaking his heart about his dad. I don't need 8 horn guys, But I get it. Yeah, I get it.
I just want to go back to something you're saying. Like, what did you discover?
Yeah.
Like doing this one thing, I didn't discover this, but it gave me a new appreciation for it. Was the reunion tour, like that initial reunion tour?
99, yeah.
The recordings from, and like I've always, I mean, that's the first tour I ever saw, so I have an affection for it in my heart. But just digging into the recordings from that band, that tour is so great.
That's a great. That's basically almost like a Trax tour. Like it's just,
right.
it's crazy, and that live in New York, you write about it. Like that version, that version of Lost in the Flood from that is like the Atlantic City one too is unbelievable. Like, yeah, that might be. I know
Youngstown.
Crazy. Yeah.
Just like the 3 guitars.
Yes.
It is like unbelievable. Like I love that so much.
And I know older people, like I'm considered, like when I go to Bruce show, I'm kind of considered still almost young. It's like Nils Lofgren's considered like a new member of the band still. Like these guys are like, oh, you didn't see him in 78 and 8. I'm like, I know I didn't. I don't know what you want me to say. Like I thought it was great in 99. I think it's great now. There's a snobbery within it. I think it's kind of funny. But you're right. There's the now you've sort of the Nils Lofgren, who's not really part of this album, obviously, but like is kind of around, and there's a lot of weird stuff in the whole. I've had Steven on the show, and like obviously that's a mulligan he would like back. I think he missed not being part of that couple of years.
Well, I'm sure financially.
That is definitely true. That is definitely true. Yeah.
But it's funny because it's sad that he left, but then it's like, does he end up marrying Patty if Steven Van Zandt doesn't leave? It's like a funny.
That's true.
Moment, because that's how she ends up in the band. Because although maybe she would have been in the band anyway
as a singer.
Who knows?
Yeah, she had like kind of a different role. That's true. But you're right. The band, and I think it's like everything else. When I saw him at Mohegan maybe a month ago, and one of the guys, I just always marvel in this album too. I'm like, especially in the title track, like Max Weinberg is like one of the greatest drummers of all time. Like on that song, he's fucking unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, it's just like them jamming on that song.
Right.
And it's incredible to me like how perfect it sounds and loose at the same time. Yeah. Because they are, it is Bruce just being like, okay, I'm going to play this song and we're going to go and we're going to hit record. And it's not labored over or anything like that, but it sounds perfect when you hear it on the record. So yeah, that band was just so goddamn good.
What songs, you went through it, like what songs made every cut? Like every point, all the different versions of the album that were coming out. What songs were definitively, absolutely no question going to be on there every time? Was it just the title track? Is that it?
Born in the USA. I feel like My Hometown was always part of the mix.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was like not always the last track. It kind of moved around.
Right.
I'm trying to think of like what else. I mean, because there was like a lot of movement.
Yeah.
In those different track lists and how he just kept writing songs. I mean, the funny thing about Born in the USA is that like the songs that actually ended up on the record like were made pretty quickly and early on.
Yes.
And he just sat on them for like 2 years.
Right. Yes.
Which is unbelievable. Because you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, he labored over this record for 2 years, which is technically true because he just kept writing songs in a way that seems like he was just procrastinating putting this record out.
There's like wild shit too. Like he would just like one day he would write like My Father's House, and then 2 days later he'd write like Cover Me, and you're like, what the fuck what's going? How is he doing this? Like, how did he figure out how do you make it work? Like, how does his brain work? But you wrote, and it's true when I'm reading it, like, and I think it was, oh Jesus, I'm forgetting his name. I'll remember it.
Like Plotkin?
Chuck Plotkin. Chuck Plotkin was like, hey, this is getting worse. Like, let's get our shit together here. We don't want Nebraska too. Like, CBS let you do that, but like, we're not doing this again. And my guess is that might not be a conversation he could have had with Bruce Springsteen in like 1988, but maybe he could have still at that point. But as you said, it was getting kind of not even so much worse, but it was getting less and less commercial, maybe.
Yeah, and just the excitement of like those band tracks.
Yeah,
I think Landau was really pushing for that, which I think he's right. Even though there are songs that he wrote like in '83 when he was in LA, and he was in this interesting period where he was recording by himself, but the instrumentation was kind of in the vein of Born in the USA. There's like synthesizers and electric guitars, but it's definitely more of an intimate record.
Are you talking more like what songs are we talking?
Like County Fair, like that song, or there's a song called The Klansman that I read about.
Yep, we used to be a lot of time on that, yeah.
And all of these kind of spooky, like 2-minute songs. There's a song called Fugitive's Dreams from there. I mean, all these songs that...
Is that Johnny Bye Bye around then too, or no?
Yeah, it'd be around there.
That makes sense. I mean, you could put County Fair, like, it wouldn't be as good a record, but like you could replace My Hometown with a sound with like County Fair and put it on the album. It'd be a wild way to close the album. But I mean, but like you could see it. I mean, you have, what is your...
It's a beautiful song. I mean...
It's a great song. He's only played it once. He played it randomly in Darien Lake in Buffalo in 2003. Just opened, because they were at it was right by like a fairground. So he just opened the show at County Fair.
Right.
Yeah. It sounded good.
Yeah, I mean, and again, getting back to this box set idea, he did do an interview with Rolling Stone where they asked him if there was going to be a Born in the USA box, and Bruce was like,
"It's just a terrible answer."
Yeah, he said like all the good songs are on tracks.
What the fuck is he talking about?
That's not true, man. Like there's a lot of bootleg stuff.
I think he thinks I'm speaking for Bruce, which I do all the time in my head when I drive around. I even talk like Bruce sometimes by myself. I'll talk to like, sometimes when I talk to my son, I'll pretend I'm Bruce just to amuse myself because I know he's not listening to me. Right. Yeah, like, come on, Harry, get moving. What are you doing? That kind of thing. It gets me through a day. But I think when Bruce is talking about that, that was probably Andy Green, right? That's who he usually talks to.
Right. Yeah.
My guess is he thinks that's like Nebraska stuff. Like I think he thinks of all of that as Nebraska. I think he thinks of Born in the USA as like this big hit album. If you said to him, like, what is whatever, Frankie, he'd be like, that's the Nebraska Sessions.
See, but
I'm not saying it's right.
Wrong.
Oh, no, I know he is.
It's all one thing.
Right.
And that's what's so fascinating about it. That's like why that would be the greatest Bruce box set ever.
Do you think
tracks, it's hard to beat tracks, but I mean, I think from a storytelling aspect, that would be amazing.
Do you think there's a chance that this comes out with this movie, like somehow, or no? I'm pessimistic about, but that's just me.
Oh yeah.
Well, Jeremy Allen White's sitting in a room for maybe it'll be good. I just don't know cinematically what the story is there. There's so many, every friggin' weekend now. This Amy Winehouse one just bombed. Every weekend now there's a biopic of a musician. It's like I don't like Bruce to me is not like there's no I don't know. I don't feel like there's a story. I could be. I hope I'm wrong. God knows I hope I'm wrong.
I mean. It's funny because I've talked about this with other people too, just doing interviews for the book. And I said the same thing about how the making of Nebraska, it is a guy in a room just playing like a guitar. I mean, it doesn't seem that cinematic, but like I was just thinking as you were talking about that, one possible way that you could do that movie is if you do flashbacks to his childhood, because that was what he was thinking about at the time. And maybe you explore Bruce's dynamic with his dad,
right,
and mental illness struggles, things like that. And that becomes the story and like how he's overcoming, because otherwise I don't know what the story is. Like, do you like turn Johnny 99 into like a subplot like the story of that song? Like, pick that? I don't know what it would be.
Yeah. And it's not like,
because otherwise,
there wasn't like it's a great story. It's a great album. But there wasn't like when you read the book, there wasn't a ton of drama. Like CBS was like, we don't really love it, but sure, go for it. It wasn't like he was.
I mean, I actually think that, right. I think there's more drama in him doing Born in the USA.
I agree.
Frankly, because it's him trying to really decide if he wants to be a huge rock star.
Yeah.
And
he didn't.
Him dealing with that. And then, you know, if you wanted to show the aftermath of that and how the good parts and the bad parts of all that, I think that would be dramatic. And I don't know, maybe that'll be in this movie. I don't know.
Right.
But it's always hard because when you have an iconic musician, like we all know what Bruce looks like and what he sounds like. It's not like he was, you know, a guy from 200 years ago. Like the guy's alive. So any actor doing Bruce is gonna seem corny on some level. I don't know how you get beyond that, because even like Joaquin Phoenix, when he did Walk the Line, like Johnny Cash had already died.
Yes, so he was older, right?
In a way that makes it easier. He's doing young Johnny Cash. I don't know.
Yeah, same with Austin Butler in a way. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, Austin Butler, who that movie shocked me. I thought it would be terrible, and in some ways it is bad, but I really liked it. I liked it way more than I expected. Maybe I had low expectations, but I thought Austin Butler was amazing.
I thought he was very good. Yeah, Tom Hanks, I don't know, but yeah, Austin Butler was good. It's crazy. I
kind of like the campiness of Hanks.
He went for it. He was all in. He was not fucking around. He went 1,000% in.
Right.
You're right about I think. Well, let me find it. You title a Man at the Top, right?
Yeah, my fictional record.
Yeah. Oh, I have it. All right. Yeah.
Which isn't like, because the record because you know, this is an exercise I think all Bruce fans do, like with outtakes from that period. Like, what if you put out a record in '85, like just right away? And those aren't all my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Or that are outtakes, but it was like songs that I felt like fit together.
Yeah.
As like if Bruce was going to make an album about being famous,
right?
You know, all those songs kind of fit that theme.
Yeah. A lot better than, Stevie Van Zandt's famously critical of Ain't Got You, the first track on Tunnel of Love, where he's like, this is kind of obvious. Like, why are you doing this? He writes about that in his book. He kind of bitched him out. He's like, why are you writing this? But the rest of the album's unbelievable. I think when I was growing up, it was Petty, Springsteen, Mellencamp, Seeger. And I think the differentiator in a weird way, I'm a Bruce guy, but in a weird way, like, this album is the huge album that those guys all had big albums, but this is the one that those guys never had. They never had their seat in that spot. They had hits, you know, they all had huge albums, but this probably is the one that separates him, I think, from them. Yeah,
and the difference too, like with Bruce and those other guys, is that I feel like all those other guys had more radio songs than Bruce did outside of Born in the USA. Like,
definitely.
Like Petty is like the master of just writing like the perfect radio song.
Yeah, great hook.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
And his albums, I love his albums, but like, you know, you can tell on his albums what the hits are and like what the like lesser songs are.
Yeah.
Whereas like Bruce, I think, was always like an album artist. Like he's making like an album statement and like, I'm going to put out Darkness. And there's like no singles on this album, really. I mean, it's weird to think because there's lots of great, memorable songs, but like there's no like, even like The Promised Land, maybe that would be the closest thing to like.
No, Badlands was like a single, but it was like number 36 or something. I forget what. But yeah, there's no hit. There's no.
It's like intense. It's way too intense.
Born to Run doesn't have any hit songs on it. Like it's just, it's true. You're right. But even like Mellencamp, you're right. Jack and Diane, Crumbling Down, whatever. There's like 20 top.
Jack and Diane was a #1 hit.
It was,
Bruce has never had a number, like Dancing in the Dark got the #2, but he's never had a #1 song.
And I have to say, it's one of the few times I'm not. Dancing in the Dark was a #2 song, but was correctly kept out of #1 by a better song. I can't. When Doves Cry.
When Doves Cry, right?
Yeah. The Reflex was before that, and then it was When Doves Cry. But I mean, I can't. When Doves Cry is a better song than Dancing in the Dark.
What a crazy time! I mean,
wild.
Like we talk about, you know, again, like Taylor Swift, she's clearly the biggest star right now.
Huge.
But like at that time, you had like multiple people filling stadiums and selling just tens of millions of records.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, because Bruce was big, but like Prince, obviously enormous. He's got like a film and a soundtrack album that's huge.
Michael Jackson,
goes without saying.
Right.
Madonna's just having like hit after hit.
Yeah.
It's just like a factory of hits.
I think so much of that is now like Taylor Swift is, you want to say she's bigger than any of them? Totally fine. I'm not going to argue. But now it's so different. Like my kids, like my son likes a guy whose all his music is just on YouTube. Like it has like 2 million subscribers, but has this little like, there's no, back then it was just like, here's your top 40, here's your top 10. here's Culture Club, here's whoever. This is their time right now. Their record's coming out. Here's, and this man was huge. Billy Joel, Huey Lewis, like they would have these big moments. But I felt, you're right. I felt like Bruce and Prince and Michael Jackson, those three, and Madonna. And like, if somebody wants to say to me that Purple Rain's better album than Born in the USA, I can understand that. I'm a Bruce guy, but like, that's a great fucking album. So is Thriller. I mean, those are three great albums.
Yeah, and they just hung around forever. And that's the other thing that, now even like big pop records don't stick around for like 18 months.
Right.
Like Taylor Swift, one reason why she's been so big in the last, 3-4 years. I mean, she's been big for a long time, but she's gone to a different level. It's because she's putting out a new album like every 6 months, or like re-recording an album. Whereas, Born in the USA, you put it out in June of '84, and it's still putting out hits like more than a year later.
Oh boy, My Hometown was November of '85. Like it was still in the charts in January of '86. It was almost 2 years. It's great. And back then, it wasn't like today, where it's like, Bruce Springsteen's not tweeting out, "Here's my new album." Like you'd read about Rolling Stone to be kind of circulating, like, "Hey, this is going to finally happen." But that one, Born in the USA felt like this was I remember that radio station in New York played it 24-hour, Dancing Dark 24 hours straight. Like this was almost everybody understood collectively, like, okay, this is his time. This is the record.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It was like he's meeting his moment.
Yeah, right.
Like his people were primed for him. Like there were a lot of people that wanted him to be the biggest thing, and had been building for a long time.
Yeah, since the covers, right? Yeah,
really since like Born to Run, you could say, like him being on the cover, cover of Newsweek at Time. There's all this hype. Then Bruce gets a little skittish about all the hype, and he reacts by making Darkness on the Edge of Town. Then he goes to the river, finally has like a top 5 hit. Then he retreats again, does Nebraska, and then finally, boom, Born in the USA.
Then he really retreats. So, I mean, the next album, the next albums had hits, but those were just hits because I think, first of all, that's Tunnel of Love's my second. I think you and I did this once. That's my second favorite record right now. After Darkness, they had hits, but that was a clear. Like if you look at what he did the double albums, he did Tunnel of Love, and then he did Jode.
Right.
Like those 15 years were and people think he was in the wilderness. He was writing a lot of songs, and you write about this in the book, sort of the post Born in the USA sort of part of it. From that to like the reunion is such a weird. I love when artists have weird like 10-year stretches. Yeah. It's the greatest, like Neil Young, these guys. But like what a weird 15 years that is. Like I think Jode's a great album, but what a strange like between Human Touch and Lucky Town and The Rising, his only album release was The Ghost of Tom Joad. That was it for 10 years. Right. For 10 years.
Then, it's weird because he also won an Oscar in that time. So like, he did have a hit with Streets of Philadelphia, but I think it's a much different song.
From a part of another album he never released.
Right.
It's just sitting there. Yeah.
Kind of like a left field hit. I mean,
totally.
Because it's this very spare, somber song. Yes. I mean, you don't think of that being like radio fodder, a song about AIDS and it's so downbeat. But yeah, it goes to Tom Joad. That's like, I call that like the anti Born in the USA because it's like the opposite of Born in the USA in pretty much every way. I mean, I think it's like lyrically one of his best albums. I mean,
totally agree.
But in a way, and this isn't always great for songs, like you kind of want to read the lyrics more than listen to the songs sometimes.
A little bit.
They work. I mean, it took me a long time to get into that record, and part of how I got into it was I would literally listen to the songs while reading the lyrics.
Yeah.
And I usually don't do that with an album, but it was really like lyrics first with that record. But it's so dense, and like the storytelling is, I mean, you could make a TV series where each song was like a different episode, because there's such good stories.
Well, if you look it up, HBO, I remember reading this how long ago it was in Entertainment Weekly. HBO was going to do that. They talked to Springsteen about that. I can send you the link. I was reading a couple months ago again that they were going to do like here's the Line episode, here's the Straight Time episode. It'd be the most depressing series of all time. Like I don't know where the laughs are in this thing, but yeah, they had talked about it. It feels very cinematic, like a song like The Line or even like Straight Time, a New Timer is just But what's next?
I am starting to work on something. I'm going to keep that secret for now. Maybe I'll tell you off
Is it
mic.
okay?
Here.
Is it in that?
It's in my genre of books.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be like a murder mystery. I was just that'd be a great move, but
I know I'd probably be better financially to do that, but I do okay with these.
yeah,
I do well. So
yeah, how's it? So the book comes out Tuesday. Well, I don't know when it's going to drop, but so that'd be the 29th, 28th. I don't want to get it wrong.
28th.
28th.
Yeah,
You should
28th.
know that. 28th.
Right after Memorial Day.
Can I tell you something? I don't know if you're going to like this or not like this. Where I live, there's a Barnes & Noble like 10 minutes away from me in Burlington, Massachusetts. I was in that bookstore the other day. In the music section were already 2 copies of your book. Is that good or bad?
Oh, really?
Is that you're okay with that?
That's fine with me.
Okay, there's no rules. I didn't know. Okay, I wasn't gonna tell anybody, but I was like, oh, there it is. All right. It's randomly that weirdly happens sometimes, but yeah. But I think it's gonna do great.
Yeah, as long as it counts as a sale, I don't care. You know, get it out to people.
How is that? How is the like? What's the percentage? If you don't, I don't know if you know this. What's the percentage of people buying the physical copy like I would versus people not in 2024? Do you have any idea?
You mean in terms of like
download, like getting on their phone or getting on whatever versus going to the bookstore and getting their, is it 50-50? Is it not?
I think it's bigger than that. I think most people buy the physical copy.
It's the only way I can read it.
One thing that's gone up lately is the audiobook. And I actually read the audiobook for this one. That's the first time I've ever done that.
How was that?
Which was, it's really hard, but it was rewarding to do. But, you know, the thing when you record an audiobook, it is like a band in a studio, like where every flaw that you have is amplified. You know, it's like if your drummer sucks.
Yeah, right.
It's like he works live, but like you can hear every missed, you know, rhythm in the studio. And like, so like when you're recording audiobook, it's like every stomach gargle,
you gotta do it again.
Or if you have like a weird thing, you know, like if you have spit in your mouth, they had this thing. I don't know if you have done this as a broadcaster, but they had a thing like where if I had too much spit in my mouth, they had me eat a green apple slice.
Really? That worked?
I guess. I don't know. I guess it dries out your mouth
Interesting.
a little bit.
No, I didn't do that. Do you go are you so method as a voice recording artist that you do Bruce's voice, like when you read the parts of the book, or no?
I did slip into a Bruce voice when I was like quoting him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like there's parts in the book where I like quote his stage banter.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So I did slip into like a slight like, hey, how's everyone doing out there? Yeah. You know, I did that a little bit. I tried not to do it too extreme.
It's hard to avoid.
Yeah, because you got to do at least a little raspy.
Of course. Yes. Yeah.
It sounds weird if you're doing it like in a crystal clear, like, how's everybody doing tonight? You know, it doesn't really register. You got to perform it a little bit.
How long does that take? So it's the book's whatever. Say it's, how long is it? 230 pages or whatever? How long is
8 hours of it's an 8-hour audiobook.
8-hour audiobook.
It took about a week.
Nice. Good.
To do. So the last day was the shortest day. I mean, I got better as the day went on, or as the week went on. But I mean, it's different than just talking on a podcast, like reading something. You know, and anytime I would fuck up a word, there was like a director there that would correct me.
Right.
And they were like letter to the law. This was like I was looser with it. There were some words that I was reading. I'm like, why did I? Like it looks fine on the page, but I'm like, why did I use this word that's like so hard to pronounce?
Right.
Like I was like who wrote this crap? Like why? You know, like I would want to simplify it a little bit, but they're like, no, you got to keep it the way it's written.
So you're diving into another book now.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez, here we go again. That'll be done. That'll be done. Will you finish that book this year? It'll
be due in July. Of 2025.
Oh, okay, so you although it seems like a lot of time, but it's probably not a lot of time. I don't think. Did you try and talk to Springsteen or no?
No, I didn't.
It's a good move, I think.
I just feel like with the books I do, you know, they're like cultural criticism books.
Yes.
And and when you talk to the artist, it becomes something different.
Have you interviewed him before?
I've never interviewed Bruce. No.
Yeah.
I've interviewed, I talked to Little Steven and like some other people in that orbit, but never Bruce. I mean, I'd love to interview Bruce. I do wonder though, like at this point in his life, how much he can really access how he felt at that time, and like how much of it is him just repeating stuff that he's said
Well,
in other interviews.
You do poke a few holes in the Springsteen mythology in the book, a little bit, which I've questioned sometimes. Sometimes the stories don't quite add up, but I think that's also right. I think that's just part of being asked it for 50 years. It's like,
yeah. Well, and again, like, yeah, this is something he did like a lifetime ago.
yeah, right.
So like, how much does he even remember or think about it or whatever? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think again, you know, hopefully people will get something out of the book.
Oh, the book is great. No, I cannot recommend it enough. I mean, if you're a Bruce fan, definitely. If you're not, if you're a music fan, I mean, look, this is one half of one of the great podcasts of all time, Rivals, which I have mentioned many times in my show. The late, great Rivals, which I miss. I didn't tell you. The other day, I had nothing to listen to on my run. I listened to the Simon and Garfunkel Rivals episode again after watching it. Because I watched that Paul Simon documentary. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Well, did you do it? I didn't fast forward through all the when he was making the new album and just get to the...
I did.
Yes. I think everybody did. Is that just like a deal? He's like, I'll do this thing, but you got to like promote my new album.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure he feels like...
Because that was nobody.
I want to be relevant.
Nobody wants to hear his 12 Psalms, whatever that. Like nothing against Paul, he's great, but like I'm like, just get me to the Garfunkel gossip. Like just get me to the juice.
Yeah, like and that album is pretty good too. Like
it's not bad.
One. Yeah, but I don't. But yeah, I'm with you. I am more curious about the older stuff and all the stuff with Graceland and everything, and all the controversy with that. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's a pretty prickly guy.
He is. But he doesn't pretend not to be though.
Right.
Which he's like, yeah, I'm kind of an asshole. Like, this is the way I am. Like, you did this with Rivals, some other stuff. It is interesting when one guy in the duo or a group is clearly the reason for success. But it's also funny that Paul Simon is still mad at this stage of his life with all he's done that Art Garfunkel sang Bridge Over Troubled Water. Like, it still pisses him off.
Right.
Like, today, I just find that music's it's like Felder with like Victim of Love. I just love shit like that, where it's just like band stuff. You can't beat that. You can't. And the thing about Bruce's is very little of that, honestly. Like there's like some guys get a little pissy, but not really. There's no real drama, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I think it helps that he's always been in control.
Right.
You know, I think people know their place for the most part.
But it's not like there's not like a wild guy in the band. There's not like a wild child, you know, like a reb, you know, like a lunatic or anything. They just kind of go, they do their job, they go home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, there's something I've heard about one member of the band being kind of like a difficult person. Maybe I've heard stories from a person in the know.
Is that person still alive or not alive?
Still alive.
Oh,
still
interesting.
Alive.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe I'll tell you that off
okay.
Here. I'm not. You know, it's not my story to tell publicly.
Fair enough.
It's interesting gossip.
Oh, I like that.
But yeah, like Bruce, I think it's interesting with Bruce too to me that he guests on a lot of people's records, but like you know, like he's not someone that was going to be in the Traveling Wilburys. You know what I mean? Like he seems like he's always been on his own.
That's true.
In a way.
That's a good point. Like Petty, for some reason. Even when I was a kid, my dad was a massive Roy Orbison fan. It was his favorite singer. So when that group came out, it felt weird to me that Petty was in it because he was so much younger than those guys.
Right.
But actually now you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like he fits in that group where like Bob Seger would not be in the Traveling Wilburys. Like he just wouldn't. But Bruce was never like, hey, let's do it. Like right now he did that song with Mellencamp a couple of years ago, whatever. But like he wouldn't go do an album with him where they would just do duets or something. He just never been his way. Is that a control thing only, you think?
Yeah, I think probably. You know, he just seems like someone who deliberates over his own work so much.
Right.
You know, even now, I mean, he's still talking about like these, you know, the tracks too, like all of these like albums in the vault that he hasn't put out, and deciding when he's gonna finally be ready to do it,
which he kept total control of, even though he sold the publishing.
Yeah,
I think you would know better than me. I always wonder this. So he reportedly sold it for $600 million. Let's just say that's true.
Yeah.
Where's the bang for the buck for those guys with $600 million? I'm missing it. What am I missing? These records don't sell anything anymore. Like, is it for like Tunnel of Love was played in the movie Challengers? Like, what did they get for that? 100,000? Like, where's the 600 million?
I don't know. I mean, there was like a gold rush with that stuff for a while, and I wonder. I feel like that's slowed down a little bit.
Yes,
maybe because like a lot of the big catalogs have been bought up. But, I mean, there's such a obsession with IP.
Yeah, right.
And I think people are just scooping up these things in the hopes that, oh, maybe we can turn this into a musical, or we can like turn it into a theme park, or like we can have AI Bruce Springsteen song, whatever it is. Like, things will evolve over time that you can just recycle this intellectual property into other products.
Nebraska theme park, yeah.
Oh yeah, the Nebraska theme park.
Highway Patrolman ride, yeah. Be great.
Nebraska line of sandwiches or whatever. I don't know, but I'm with you. I wonder how valuable it actually will be. I have no idea. Who knows? I mean, we might be seeing Bruce Springsteen holograms in like 20 years.
I'll probably go. I mean, honestly, sadly, I'll be there, an old man just watching him. Like, oh, this is great. I'm lying to myself. Last thing, first of all, I'll just say this: there's nothing you could do. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, End of the Heartland, Steven Hyden. The book is fantastic. Go get it. It comes out Tuesday. Go buy it. Go buy it. I'll keep promoting it. Can you bring back Rivals just to do this Hall Notes episode just for me? I'll pay for it. I'll get your buddy. I mean, this is what I need in my life for my run on the Wednesday morning. I wanted. It was not. I wanted. You said this. It wasn't your call, right?
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back, and I was alone on that. So
yeah, well,
people always say to me, "I love that show. I wish you would have kept doing it." And I was like, I agree.
Yeah,
but it wasn't my call.
Takes two. Yeah. It is. That's another great. The Hall Notes thing makes me laugh. I watched a John Oates interview the other day, and they're just. I'm like, these fucking guys hate each other. Why do they hate each other so much?
Well, because I think Hall.
Yes,
I feel like he feels like he did everything, and that Oates was just in the background.
Yeah, but like,
which is probably true. I don't know. But
the interview I watched, Oates is
probably true.
Well, the interview I watched, Oates was like, yeah, like he wrote most of the stuff. He's like, yeah, he was kind of the big reason why. But yeah, I think there's that weird. I remember when Daryl Hall tried to go solo in the '80s, and it just like his records sound like a Hall Notes record.
Right.
It's like the weird thing. It's like it's like I don't know. But to me, the ultimate one is like Henley and Fry, where it's like they both went their own ways and then they came back together. But clearly, Henley was the better artist, but yet Fry was more necessary for the band in a weird way.
Right. And like how Henley had to decide that I don't want to have to take all the criticism. I'd rather just be in a band.
Yeah, I'd rather just go back to the band.
And also that band is just like a piggy bank too.
Oh, I mean, it's crazy.
If you just like want to chill out and tour the world and make like, hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Yes. I mean, that was such a cash cow.
Is this book about the Eagles?
No,
God, it's not. It. A man can dream. A man can.
Yeah.
I just want a book titled Felder. That's it, by Steven Hyden. Just a long form interview with Don Felder. It was my favorite character in that great documentary. But anyway,
he has his own book.
I know, Heaven and Hell. Who do you think you're talking to? I think I've read Heaven and Hell in my life 12 times.
That's another one where you talk about the documentary where you fast forward through the new stuff. Like with biographies like that, it's fast forwarding through like all the childhood stuff that you don't care about.
Nobody cares about Don Henley talking about how he grew up in Linden, Texas. Like you just get. Although the one thing I will say about that documentary is the early stuff does have like Kenny Rogers and Ronstadt and like Jackson Brown and Seeger.
In the documentary, it's all great.
Yeah, and the books, right? Yes, no matter what book. I just got sent to me the Daniel Stern biography. I want to have Daniel Stern on the show. The interview him anyway. And like I opened and I was like, oh shit, the first 40 pages are about like his childhood. I was like, just get me to when he showed up on the set of Breaking Away so I can just go on the journey through Diner. Just don't why? Who invented that?
Yeah, some books are like, oh, my grandma and my grandpa met each other. Like we're going to them now?
Yes.
It's not even your life. We're going to like your grandparents' life. Like, come on, man.
Who thinks that's a good idea? I don't understand that. Would you ever do like a biography?
Yeah. I wrote my friend Steve Gorman from the Black Crows.
Oh,
wrote a book about the band, and I co-wrote that with him, and that was a lot of fun.
But would you do like a guy, just like a biography? I'm just saying Seeger, for example, just like not like from the critical perspective, but just like a biography. Does that not interest you?
I don't know. I mean, those books take so long to do that at some point unless you're getting a big advance, I don't know, like financially, it's like hard to
Right.
commit. Like my friend Bob Mayer, he wrote the book about the Replacements. That
Oh yeah,
Trouble Boys.
that was like 10 no longer ago, right?
That was like
was that?
16, I think that came
Yeah.
out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a brilliant book, but
Good
like
book.
he worked on that for like 6 years.
Right.
You know, I
Breaks
mean,
in half.
that's like a big commitment. And I mean, and he had to deal with like a bunch of insane people, writing because like the band members were all crazy. But
I'll tell you that Peter Ames Carlin book of Bruce is a good book.
it is.
That's like a good critical. Even some of the guys in the band Gary gets a little testy in that book. Like there's some stuff going on there. That's actually a pretty good book. I actually like that. I like that book better than Bruce's book, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean,
I like
you heard
Bruce's
the audiobook of Born to Run?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Yeah.
Because the audiobook takes it to another level.
I agree. I like Steven's book better than Bruce's book.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, Bruce will write. Look, obviously, I love Bruce, but Bruce will write. Bruce will spend no time on what we just talked about, what you just wrote about. Like he literally spends no time in the book on stuff like that. There are albums he doesn't mention in the book. It's a lot. And I get it. Like he's on his own. It's not about that stuff, but like Steven's book is got a ton of shit like that. I just liked it more. Like Bruce's book is a great book, but with Bruce, Bruce always feels at a distance. He's always at an arm's length. I don't know.
Well, big artists like that, they have no sense of perspective on like what people want to know. Like Neil Young, like he wrote a book about himself called Waging Heavy Peace, and like I want to hear about Crosby, Stills and Nash. I want to hear about making Harvest. None of that, but he's going to write about his cars for like 50 pages.
He loves his model trains,
because that's what he cares about,
right?
And he doesn't care like what a reader would care about. So it can be a tough go.
But I would argue that I'm sorry, Steve. I would argue though that like Neil Young, I think is famous for like I don't give a fuck what anybody. Right. I'll do. What was that album? The one he did in the early '80s. It was like all trans. Yeah, like Bruce does care what people think. Like Neil Young would never go to make a specifically commercial album. I don't think like that, like this. I don't think he could. Yeah. I don't think he could have, by the way. But
I do think on some level though, like when these guys sit down to write a book, the things that they're most interested in is the childhood. I mean, I think that they're feeling very wistful about their own life. They want to write about their uncles and aunts and all that stuff. And like in Bruce's book, I do actually like a lot of that stuff. Same. I mean, I think if you've got like a larger than life person, I actually think the childhood stuff is interesting. If it's like Don Felder, I don't care about.
No, get me like get me to the Eagles. Yeah, don't.
Yeah, give me to when you join the Eagles and just start the book there.
Right. Yes.
And tell just shit talk Don Henley the whole time. Like that's what we want.
Ooh, you hated Henley. Oh God.
Henley.
Jesus God.
But I get Henley's perspective though. I actually think Henley is right in that scenario. It's like, dude, you're the guitar player. You know, you're gonna make a ton of money. Keep your mouth shut.
Right.
I'm gonna make more than you. I deserve to make more than you.
Right.
But you're still gonna make you're gonna make millions of dollars every year. So shut up.
I still find the most interesting thing about the Eagles is that Henley is clearly the greater artist, but Fry was definitely, even after they came back, even after the end of the Innocents, all of that, Fry was clearly still the leader of that band. Like the first time they got together, he didn't show up. But Fry was the alpha of that band, which I find with Henley's, I think you'd agree probably, is clearly the greater artist.
Right.
I mean, Fry saying, I like, but like, you know, this guy saying like sexy girl. Like we're not talking about, you know, nothing. I mean, I loved Glenn Fry, but like it's
Smuggler's Blues.
Yeah, which is a great '80s song, but you know.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think Fry, he was the alpha, but he was like the coach of that team. Like he understood. I think he says in that doc, like as the '70s went on, I sang less and less, and Henley sang more because like, he was the better singer. And like so, he had that vision of a band leader to be like, okay, this is going to be the thing that makes us more successful. And
good. This is a good launching point for your Eagles book, which will be next after this next book.
Right.
All right. Well, the book is fantastic. There's nothing you could do. Steven Hyden, go get it. Comes out Tuesday. We'll talk to you anytime. Good. You know, I'm sure you have a ton of press coming up, but good luck with it. It's great. I can't wait for the next one.
All right, man. Thank you so
Steven.
much.
All right. Good to see you.